We are so delighted to welcome you this evening and to have so many wonderful members of the architecture and design community in the room. Rooms like this, filled with people who share that passion, are where the best conversations come to life.
Tonight's panel is titled The Home Reimagined, designing for the way that we actually live. The demands on home have shifted. There's more hours of the day, more roles, more asked of every room and every single object within it. We're here to talk about how these architects and designers are responding and what it means for homes that they are designing and creating. The very first, to my right, is Eva Marie Prineus, founder of Studio Prineus, who builds and designs with real respect for what's already there. To her right, Shona McElroy, principal of Smac Studio, whose interiors are warm, tactile and precise. Polly Harbison, founder of Harbison Design, whose buildings hold their own in the landscape. Steve Koolloos, director of MCK Architects, who has been designing homes across Australia for close to 30 years. And last but not least, Vien McArthur, chief designer at Fisher & Paykel, who brings the maker's perspective to the table. So the first question, and this is actually for all of you, so whoever would like to jump at it first. It's often said that architecture sets the stage, but a home is really felt when you're living in it, in the detail, the materials, how you move through it, and everything that you put within it. Firstly, do you agree? And secondly, if so, what does that signal for you on how people want to live within their homes?
It's a great question. I think as we design, we work through a macro and a micro process. The first maybe 30% of a project is generally the macro, and then the micro, that fine detail and materiality and tactile experience comes later in the process. We often ask our clients for a very detailed brief up front, and we want to know how they live. We need to know the pragmatic side of it, what they need in a home, but we want clues and idiosyncrasies into their lifestyle. We like to wake up at 6 a.m, make a fresh pot of coffee, and start our day in the sunshine. And that is such an incisive moment that we know to design to facilitate their home and make it a better experience. So yeah,
it's brilliant. That's great to hear. And Shona, what about you in terms of the briefs you're receiving from your clients, potential clients? Do you often have to tidy them up or push them a bit further? Or
I feel like our clients have become extremely discerning about they don't want anything that's the same. So on top of kind of how our projects function, we're having to think about how is this going to be different to what anyone's ever seen before. They're really into handcrafted things. So we go through a whole process at our design firm where we start actually with the visual, what the space might look like. And then we get into the nitty gritty of where does your cling film go, for example. Then we try and interpret their brief, which is kind of the same as what you were saying. What do you like to do in the morning? Do you like to entertain? When you entertain, how is it done? What do you cook? Is it for 5 people? Is it for 10? Is it for 20? All of that sort of stuff. We try and really interpret that and then try and deliver it before they even have to tell us, I guess. So yeah, it all needs to function.
And Vien, for you, I guess a brief is quite different when, as chief designer, designing a product. It's a bit different, obviously, to a homeowner coming and saying, I want this. What type of briefs are you getting and how do you approach something, whether it's a product?
At the moment, I mean, what we're seeing is that these homes are so diverse and so bespoke in terms of what spaces are being designed. Everything from wardrobes to scullery extensions to entertainment rooms to wellness areas. So for us, it's really kind of progressing with that and really making sure that from a functional perspective as well as an aesthetic perspective that we still feel like our products belong in those spaces as the spaces change. And then it's about that tactility and the experience and the richness of materials and the interface, the handles, all of those human elements to it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Vien. Eva Marie, this next question is for you. Your work takes a real position on building less, on sustainability, and on respecting what's already there rather than starting over. When you walk into a home, whether it be old or not, for the first time, what is the question you're trying to answer before anything else?
So we're always thinking about the layers, and every project and every site has a whole lot of layers, and we're adding another one. So we think about it not as erasing what's there, but as adding something. So I'm always sort of asking when we're on site for the first time, how much of this can we retain, and how will that create, how will that sort of springboard the next layer of the memory and the story of this place.
Now, Polly, when I think of your work, I often always think about Pearl Beach project, which we spent a couple of days shooting there, which feels like 4 or 5 years ago now, give or take. It reset what building in the bush could look like, partly because the old timber pavilion approach just isn't legal in the flame zone anymore, obviously. But what other kind of homes do you think are due for the same rewrite?
I think the buildings that have endured really well as a starting point to that conversation, I think the truth is a lot of them are actually older buildings, handcrafted buildings, and buildings that are either vernacular or were built of materials of their place. And I think one of the great problems is that really handcrafted approach has just become prohibitively expensive and continues to become more expensive. And a lot of that bespoke kind of handcrafted art has come out of buildings. So my optimistic hope is that will continue to be transformed, and also that the efficiencies that might come out of that can, in an ideal world, still leave some space and some budget for that handcrafted layer to come back.
Agreed. And Vien, I mean, listening to everyone, and there's so much chat about handcrafted, there always has been, but it feels more valuable and important than ever. I mean, we're living in such a digital and now AI-oriented world. As a product designer, what goes through your mind when you hear these narratives and the strengthening of handcrafted?
We try as much as possible to instill that touch by the hand when we're creating the products. It feels to me like the expectation from a customer and a user perspective has never really been higher than it is at the moment from a design point of view. And it's everything from the way that the product kind of relates to the environment right through to the sound, the way that the product feels when it opens and closes, the colours on the inside, the lighting, the quality of the lighting. So I guess these are all the elements that come together to create that kind of luxury feel. And I think the expectations are high, which is a good challenge.
It is. No, well said. And Shona, I mean, we touched on this a little bit, but I guess to expand, what is the single biggest shift in what your clients are asking the home to do? And is that coming from you, or are you leading them down there? Have you noticed any patterns along the lines?
Yeah, I think a big time overall thing that we're getting is they want different zones and different feelings throughout the whole house. So they want a wellness zone that feels like calm, and it might have like a micro cement wall, but then they want a den that's got like floral wallpaper, and then they want a kitchen that feels French, and literally, and then they're like, we love all of this and you have to put it together, which is a great challenge, and it's fun for us. I think it's distilling that and understanding a thread that can work together, that does create these feelings through the home, but still making the home feel cohesive. So yeah, I think the home has just been asked to do a lot, but I think the challenge is fabulous, and I think the breadth of what we can design is great for every house.
That's brilliant. Now, Polly and Eva Marie, I've been looking forward to asking you this question, but how much of a good house actually comes down to choosing the right client? And have you ever walked away from one, and was it the right call?
I'll say it's 100% the client.
Yeah.
Best projects, best client, full stop. Like, bad client, the builder can't save it, you can't, I don't know. I just think really great clients make great houses.
The best projects for us aren't necessarily the ones with the huge budgets or, the amazing, spectacular sites, but they're the ones where the client is curious, brave, and I guess invested in the process, and they are invested forever. Like, we stay in contact with them years and years later. There's going to be enough trust there to go throughout the project when things inevitably get a little bit difficult. You want to be able to have challenging conversations. So, and I'd also say that good clients aren't necessarily the ones that always say yes. It's the opposite. Sometimes the best clients are the ones that challenge and share their perspectives and are willing to ask really interesting questions and are invested in what we're doing.
Steve and Shona, let's talk about the kitchen. It's taken on the dining room, the study, the bar, half of the living room, the laundry and the mudroom. When you're designing one now, where do you actually start? And how do you start?
I start with the appliances, funnily enough. Yes, sponsor me, Fisher & Paykel. I do, though. I ask them what they want out of their appliances, because someone that wants a walk-in fridge is very different to someone that lives on their own with just a fridge drawer, for example.
And Steve?
I'm not as smart as you, Shona. I have a conversation with our clients about big blobs and little blobs. And kitchens are made up of blobs, basically. But what we want those blobs to be part of the architecture. We need the kitchen to integrate with the architecture and the architectural intent. This space is a great example. So this takes the big blobs and builds them into the architecture and then celebrates the small blobs as an island bench, etc., etc. So that's the starting point for us, trying to manage the blobbiness of a kitchen. I don't think it's fair to pick on kitchens, by the way, Aidan. You said it's taken on a lot, but it's the engine room of the house, and it's usually the first port of call when someone arrives home. It's an important space, so yeah.
Heart of the home, as people often say. And Vien, as the kitchen, and riffing with the blobs here, takes on more blobs and less blobs, what does that do to the other spaces around it and that used to sit beside it, from your opinion?
They get blobbier. Yeah. No, I think we're also seeing that there are other zones within the house as well. So almost like satellite spaces, and I guess that's often in homes that are larger, where from a convenience perspective, having zones away from that central area that then have services and therefore have appliances. They often have fridges or drinks fridges or laundries in them. So in some ways, I think this kind of notion of, the triangle and that whole very constrained kind of traditional perspective is just so much more free and so much more diverse now, that you even see these zones away from the central zone, which I think is interesting.
And Shona, from a shareability point of view, and not to reduce it down to Instagram likes and comments, but do you see the kitchen space as the most shareable, the most of all the content you create of all the homes? Because I personally feel 2-3 years ago, it was often the kitchen that would do crazy numbers. It does feel like it's shifting and changing a little bit, but what are you seeing on your end from the content that you share of your work?
That's probably more of a question for Beck, who runs my Instagram.
Yeah.
But the kitchen is definitely one that we get brought with a lot. So clients will come to us with our own kitchen saying, I love what you did here. Kitchens, I think they want to feel like a design feature in the house. And I think that's what clients are really drawn to about a beautiful kitchen, is that they're like, oh, okay, well, this obviously can pack a punch in terms of its entertaining value and what it's doing, and all of the appliances and all of the ways that it's going to be utilised, but it looks really beautiful, and I just want to stand there and it feels like moody or whatever it is. So I think, yes, they do very well on the Instagram. And then powder rooms do very well too. After that, no appliances in there, sorry.
Yeah. Not yet anyway.
Is it a good time to mention butlers' pantries?
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Does anyone have a butler? No. So the butler's pantry is the solution for the open plan kitchen, which has become the predominant part of the living zone. So now we have butler's pantries, which I call the chaos cupboard. Chaos is created in a kitchen quite often, but we don't want to visually connect to that chaos. So now we have a room where it can happen, and it's called the butler's pantry. And the other thing I guess we notice as a practice with kitchens, they are being celebrated as the dominant space in the living zone. But the island bench is starting to, like you mentioned powder rooms before, it's a space, an object in a space that's now becoming a bit of a fashion accessory, I think. We like it. It's a great moment to be creative and show your wares kind of thing. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Now, luxury has become an interesting word, somewhat worn out sometimes as well. But I guess the question here is, how is the brief for luxury changing, or what was luxury all those years ago? And I guess, what are your clients asking for now?
Yeah, I think, well, for us, our clients are coming to us with, it's less about luxury and it's more about enough. So enough space, enough light, enough connection to the outdoors. I call it elegant sufficiency. And I guess, 20 years ago, luxury was all about, imported finishes and how big something, how many rooms and all of that. Whereas now I feel like our clients understand luxury as the intangibles, like having time, calm, adaptability, and you deeply enjoy it.
I just have a big thing about kind of what I call barefoot luxury, where actually, and especially in a holiday home, it has to be a holiday for everyone. Luxury is actually just being able to walk in easily and shut the door easily. Let's make it smaller, take your shoes off, tactile, feel good, live as much outdoors as you can. Bathrooms can be outdoors, and so it's and actually just low maintenance. It just has to function and be a bit less.
Luxury is almost the new norm, but it's a subliminal luxury, and it's not gold plating. It's in the products that our clients and we as designers and architects expect to be implementing into our homes. There's an expectation now that everything has a sense of luxury to it, and it's become the norm. We don't gold plate. We don't want fancy, but we want quality, and we almost demand it, I think. So,
I completely agree. I think, kind of in addition to that point that I was making before around the tactility, the material, everything through the whole product, that whole experience. I think the other thing about it is that for us, it's also trying to anticipate a little bit where the values of the customers are going. So I guess as an example, from a fabric care perspective, what we see is that there's much more of an appreciation for this kind of longevity of garments and of fibres, and not wasting and throwing things away too quickly, and really you invested a lot of money in your wardrobe if you're a luxury person. So how do we actually shift that thinking within our approach from purely removing the soil or the odours or the wrinkles to actually how do we preserve the garment and how do we prolong the life of that garment? So it's kind of how do we respect those items that people have and care for. So it's kind of really thinking about those bigger plays and how they're affecting our customers.
Thank you very much to our amazing panellists. Can we please get a round of applause for them? Thank you for a brilliant discussion. And again, thank you all for being here tonight.